Dr. Raymond Deutsch, endowed with an innate empathy for those suffering substance abuse disorders, Raymond Deutsch devoted nearly 40 years to studying, treating, and advocating on behalf of addicts and their families. Through his clinical work, mentorship, and expertise in medical legal law, Dr. Deutsch, mentored by Dr. David Smith, was a leader in the San Francisco Bay Area's treatment community in fundamental and evidence-based practice. While living in the Central Valley of California, he was the medical director of multiple treatment programs, director of practices serving the medically underserved population, and assistant clinical professor of psychiatry at the University of California. Although remembered as a brilliant physician with a wonderful, sometimes quirky sense of humor, laced with wit and a touch of sarcasm, it was his individual encouragement to better oneself that touched so many. Dr. Deutsch was born in Germany June 27, 1946, and departed this life January 7, 2019.
So, hello everyone. I think we're just about to get started, and before we actually do, we just have a guest to acknowledge. So, we are welcoming Xanadu, very VIP. Great. Okay. There are just a few people approaching their seats, so we'll just give them a minute. So welcome, family, friends, and community of Dr. Raymond Deutsch. We thank all of you for attending as we gather in the spirit of love and compassion. And we appreciate all of you who've traveled from all over to be here, and also acknowledge those who couldn't be with us and express their regrets. And I know there's always a range of emotion in a gathering such as today's, from sadness and loss to gratitude and appreciation for a life well lived. My name is Irene Kane. I'm a life cycle celebrant, and I've been privileged to learn about Ray from memories shared by his wife Monica and his close friends Ken Nitzberg and David Smith. So as we come together today, we'll honor Ray, we'll thank him for his gifts of compassion, wit, and joy, and to say our goodbyes. We'll also give comfort to one another by sharing memories and keeping Ray's bright, thoughtful, and supportive nature alive in our hearts. So in our program today, we'll have a short silent meditation in which we invite you to participate, a reading of tribute, a short biography of Ray, as well as personal eulogies from David Smith, friend and colleague of 36 years, Ken Nitzberg, a college friend who reconnected with Ray in recent years, and Richard Illingworth, a longtime friend and colleague from college. So we will begin with a short meditation. So this is a time to just quietly express some gratitude and thanks for having known Ray. Just reflect on memories, what perhaps fed your connection, or even say what you didn't get to say during his lifetime. Raymond Morris Deutsch was born in Erlanger, Germany, June 27, 1946, to parents David and Raymond Deutsch. He's survived by Monica Deutsch, his loving wife of 43 years, as well as 2 sons, Eric and Christopher, 7 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren, his sister Marguerite, and nephews Gavin and Brendan Illingworth, their spouses Courtney and Lauren, and their children. And then, of course, we can't forget Xanadu. Ray received both his undergraduate and medical degrees from the University of California, Davis, and was board certified in both internal medicine and addiction medicine. He also served in the U.S. Navy. He lived and worked in the Fresno and Irvine areas for many years and returned to Berkeley later in life. He cherished his home in the hills with its dramatic view of the bay and enjoyed many evening sunsets with Monica and Xanadu. He's been described as a good person, incredibly smart, an excellent physician, good friend, mentor, dedicated contributor to the recovery field, and a bit quirky. He's known for his out-of-the-blue expressions, outlandish remarks, and occasional forgetfulness. Family, friends, and colleagues delighted in his dry, quick wit. Avid was a word often used to describe his interests and hobbies, which included scuba diving, bicycling, and traveling. He had a strong competitive streak, enjoyed playing basketball in his younger years, and was an enthusiastic Warriors fan. He faced a lot of adversity as a child and later struggled with alcoholism. Fortunately, he found recovery and dedicated his life to addiction medicine. He valued his sobriety and spirituality, learned through his continued recovery. Ray appreciated classical and romantic music. He was fond of animals, particularly dogs. Xanadu was his 3rd schnauzer and shared one of Ray's favorite activities, napping. They could often be found snuggled on the sofa together, content in each other's company. He liked acknowledging Monica to Xanadu by saying, "We've got a real good mama. She takes good care of us." He counted on a regular visit from a hummingbird who came to him as he was meditating in the garden. Ray found great joy spending time with family and sharing meals with close friends. He appreciated and praised Monica's cooking and liked to say, "You can't get this in any restaurant." He was grateful for his family, a job he loved, and a community he appreciated. He contributed to the Children's International Fund and supported the education of young children, now in their teenage years. When he retired, he had at least 5 different parties honoring his contributions and his accomplishments. Ray had high standards for the medical profession and was concerned about any incompetence. His brilliance, sense of humor often laced with sarcasm, and his individual encouragement to better one's life touched many people. Through his 12-step work, he really understood acceptance and believed the phrase, "The only person I can change is myself." He didn't like to admit that as we age, some of our faculties weaken, especially hearing and memory. Once when Monica asked if he'd liked the last tangerine, he looked at her strangely and then said, "Now, why would I want to change my name?" When attending an event, he and Monica arrived separately but planned to return home together, Monica couldn't find him after the event. She called his cell and found him on the Bay Bridge. He was returning to Berkeley, but he was always able to laugh at his mistakes. Several people spoke of Ray's quirkiness. Before leaving for a trip, he'd purchase an additional cell phone so he'd have one on hand, just in case he lost his. Well, the plan worked, as he did manage to sometimes lose his. Ray passed from this earth on January 7th, 2019, and he's remembered for his unconditional love, his kindness, compassion, friendship, humor, and dedication. He lived a very full and meaningful life. So we give thanks for Ray's generous and caring spirit and for the legacy he leaves in this world. All of you gathered are vessels of memories of Ray, and will have a chance to share your memories with each other as a tribute and means of comfort today. Raymond Morris Deutsch, you are certainly missed. So we invite David Smith to come up. He's our first speaker.
At Monica's request, I've written my remarks to share with the memory file, and I hope everybody else will honor her and contribute their thoughts. So this is entitled Memories of Our Dear Friend Ray Deutsch. Millicent and I are honored to share memories of Ray at this beautiful service. The strongest memory we have is how he loved Monica and his dogs. The latest being Zanny. We saw Rags and Zippy come and go with great sadness, just as he shared our sorrow when our dogs May and Maddox passed. We shared a bond as dogs are the only things that love you more than they love themselves. Our relationship with Ray started in the early 80s as he was transitioning into recovery after a long battle with the terrible disease of alcoholism, with Monica at his side one step at a time. As a talented internist, he began as a volunteer at the Haight-Ashbury Detox Program at our Haight-Ashbury Free Clinics, and later worked with Don Wesson and I, starting the recovery house called Plaza House in 1984, and went on to become one of the top addiction medicine physicians in Northern California, retiring last year as medical director of Bayside Marin. Along the way, we shared many life experiences, some tragic and some hilarious. One of the saddest was when I was staying at their house in Fresno, and Monica was waiting for a visit from her father, who was flying in from Kentucky to visit her. He never made it. Dying at a stopover along the way, they sent me to the airport to retrieve the suitcase with no father attached from the carousel, and we had tears all around. One of the funniest was the cruise to Mexico we went on after Ray had one of his numerous mountain bike falls. He fractured his pelvis and was in a wheelchair. I pushed him around the ship, and once we went down a narrow service hallway by mistake, scaring several service maids as they came out of the room. We called it Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. We were scuba diving buddies and shared many trips to exotic places around the globe, the last being a live aboard to Cuba as we danced to the samba while sailing through the Garden of the Queens Bay in beautiful Cuba. In fact, our last visit prior to his demise was at lunch at Altamira. He was covering for Pi Driscoll. We talked about mutual patience, shared of our recent Christmas with Mill, Monica, Don, and Eileen, a planned scuba trip we had to Cozumel, as well as a whole series of other shared memories. In other words, Ray was looking to the future. Soon after, he collapsed and died. At his bedside, Monica, Mill, and I held hands and said the Serenity Prayer as we saw his life energy slip from his body onto his higher power. For there is a special place for people like Ray who have helped so many people recover from addiction, and I know he is there now. Peace and health, David and Millicent. We love you, Monica.
Thank you very much, David. These are wonderful memories of a long friendship. And next, Ken Nitzberg.
Dangerous up here. I met Ray in the fall of 1965, if anybody can believe that far back, along with another gentleman sitting right there who I haven't seen in a while, Mr. Illingworth. Ray was a pledge at the Kappa Sigma fraternity house at UC Davis, one of a class of, about 500 of you, Rich? About 40 or something like that. We moved into a new house, it was huge, and we had to fill it, so we pledged every freshman male who would accept. I pledged the following semester when Ray was inactive, so he was my boss for 3 months. Those were some really great times. We all had a good time. My senior year, I spent way too much time looking at Ray's butt. He was the center on our intramural football team and I was the quarterback. And we had a standard play. We had 2 great wide receivers, and Ray would snap the ball, and the receivers would go out, and Ray would just turn around and I'd throw him the ball. And our senior year, until I tore my knee apart, we were undefeated. So we had a good time. We graduated in spring of 1968, and I didn't see Ray again, or pretty much anybody from the fraternity, as we all went our separate ways. And then in 2011, early in that year, one of our other fraternity brothers, his name is Denny Craig, who's infamous in his own mind, called and said, "You want to have dinner?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" So I met him in Fairfield, of all places, and one of our other fraternity brothers, Bob Tate, showed up. And we were sitting there saying, we got to put on a reunion. And they looked at me and said, "Why don't you do it?" And I said, "Who are you talking to?" So we did, and we started emailing everybody we could find, and we ended up having a reunion in Davis in July of 2011, and we invited every single member of the fraternity from the 60s that we could find. And we had 110 guys show up from all over the country and a couple from outside the country. We took over a brew pub, which is appropriate, in Davis. We found 12 of our fraternity brothers who'd passed, and some that sent their regrets couldn't come. And one of the things I did is, for putting this thing on, is I bought a t-shirt for everybody with a special little emblazing on it. And so I was standing at the door handing them out as they came in. And it was really interesting because it was like 40 some odd years after we graduated. And everybody fell into 3 camps. There were those I recognized immediately. They hadn't changed one bit. Then there were those that I recognized by their voice. You knew exactly who it was. And then there were those I had no idea who the hell they were. One of my favorites was a gentleman who was a good friend of Richard Mine's, Joseph Aaron West the Ninth, because as a pledge we had to memorize everybody's full name. And I asked, he had a very interesting, what we called mug name. He was called Abo. You can extrapolate that for whatever you want. And I said, "Abo, what are you doing these days?" He goes, "I'm a farmer." I said, "Oh, really? Oh, where?" He goes, "Way up north by the Oregon border." I said, "What do you farm?" He goes, "I'm a farmer." I said, "Enough said." So I saw Ray. We hadn't seen each other in, 40 some odd years. I said, "What are you doing? Where are you living these days?" He goes, "I live in Rockridge." I said, "What?" "I live right on the hill right above you." So we made a date to go have lunch at Olivetto's, which is a restaurant in Berkeley that we frequent way too often. So we met and had lunch, and then we decided to have dinner, and we'd never met Monica, and my wife Joanne and Monica hit it off immediately. Now they're joined at the hip. I have a wife, 2 daughters, and a granddaughter, and now I have another woman in my life. I've been told that Monica's now part of our family, which is perfectly fine with me. So we started going out to dinners from time to time and doing things. And then when it comes to holidays, my favorite holiday, there's 2 really. One is opening day of duck season, but that doesn't count for most of you. The other is Thanksgiving. And so we always put on a big deal at Thanksgiving. It drives my wife crazy, but that's my thing. And Ray and Monica joined us every year for probably the last 5, 6 years, something like that. Monica would always bring a tray full of hors d'oeuvres that would embarrass a 3-star restaurant. It was so good. And Ray would sit there at the table and eat his way through dinner, but he always saved room for dessert. He was a dessert guy. So we rekindled our friendship. And then on January 6th, I got a call. Excuse me. I'm not good at this stuff. From my wife saying Ray's in the hospital. So I went down to Kaiser, and there was Ray all wired up with tubes everywhere, and Monica, he didn't look good. And the doc came in and said, prognosis is not great. And the next day, Joanne called me and said, I'm going to the hospital. You better come down now. So I did. I walked in, and Ray had passed about 15 minutes before I got there. It's not often you can rekindle excuse me. Need some scotch. Sorry, Dr. Smith. It's not often you get to rekindle a friendship after 55 years, but we were lucky enough to do that. So we'll miss him.
Thank you. Yes. It's okay to applaud if you want. These words are very touching. And Richard Illingworth is our next speaker.
Thanks, Irene. Gosh, thanks for the memories, Ken. I remember back those times. I think I might have known Ray even longer than Ken, because I met him in the fall of '64. But we all met in Davis, as Ken noted. And Ray, from being in the fraternity, was my fraternity brother. And he introduced me to his sister, which was a risky thing for any young man to do. Of course, I fell in love with her and married her, and they became my brother-in-law. So I kind of related to Ray in two ways. And we spent many, many hours together talking, playing, goofing around. He had a little MG convertible we used to drive around in, and like to think we were pretty cool. But you know, as I stand here and I think about the addictions and the things that happen, I feel a little bit guilty about the role I might have played in that. Were some pretty wild times back in school. It was the 60s after all. I mean, and I'm actually surprised that Kenny remembers so much of it. But Ray was a unique individual. And all the people, you know, we called him Raybert. That was what we called him back in the day. I still always called him Raybert. And Raybert, he was always a little forgetful, always a little nutty, and certainly had a droll and wry sense of humor. I mean, that was Ray, you never know. But I remember one time, and I think this talks to his intellect and stubbornness and just the way he was. We were sharing an apartment in Davis, and I had lost my keys or something. I was frantic. I gotta find my keys, Ray. I gotta find my keys. And Ray said, he didn't move. I said, "Can you help me find your keys?" He says, I don't get up and look for things like that. You just think it through, and where you'll remember where you left your last thing. And well, he was convinced you could always figure something out, and you never had to actually move, which was good because he was lazy too. But that's the way Ray was, and that's what he would do. He sat there and he made me go through it, and we found the keys without looking for them, and it taught me a great lesson. And I have ever since then. I always think before I leap, but it also doesn't surprise me at the end. You know, after when Ray got sick and sort of said, there's nothing wrong with me, if I understand what really happened. he just thought he could figure everything out on his own and, you know, diagnose himself and he would take care of it. That was Ray. So none of us should be too surprised. It was being Ray, and just a wonderful guy that he was. And I will miss him. Thank you.
Thank you again, Richard. Another nice portrait. So we invite anyone who'd like to come and share a memory, a story, anything that you'd like to share. This is a good time to do it.
Maybe just say how you knew.
Yeah, Ray was my uncle. My name is Brendan. Richard is my father, and I have known Ray since I was born. And most of my memories of him are your childlike memories that are fleeting, more picture stuff. And I have some from when I was an adult. But I mean, my fondest are when I was little, and we would play, and he was just a very fun person. He was always positive, and I loved his quirky stubbornness that has come out several times. I know everybody knows that about Ray. He was very smart, very quirky, very witty. I love that about him. But I forget what your name was, the Ken story of looking at Ray's hiney, that's what we call it in our, is also my story that I wrote down because, and I'll share it with everybody. We would ride bikes together, and as much as I thought I was in good shape, I'm convinced that stubbornness or that mental stubbornness is much more valuable. He was in phenomenal shape, and he had a mind over matter type of thing that was just unbelievable. And we rode from Walnut Creek down to Dublin, and that's a windy, hot stretch of road. And we were together, and we were pals, and on the way down and on the way back, he didn't care who I was or what my state was. I just saw his little hiney go off into the distance, and 30 minutes later, after he had been sitting down at Tomatino's, didn't complain, didn't say anything. I came just to give me 3 gallons of water. He was an amazing person in so many ways, and I miss him. I thank you guys for sharing.
Hi, I didn't prepare anything, so I have no idea what I'm going to say. I'm his sister. And when we were little, he was the best brother you could have. We were very close in age, and I was a little chubbier, and he was kind of short through our childhood. So everybody thought we were twins. And he took care of me. He held my hand. We took me everywhere. We lived on the edge of the woods, and he would take me deep in the woods and hold my hand because he knew I wouldn't find my way back. We belonged to the Buddy Club, and they were the kids who did that. We moved a lot as kids, so we were very close. Every class I went to, people would say, "Oh, you're Ray Deutsch's sister, wow." And then a few weeks in, they go, "Well, you're not really like him." I was like, "Oh, sorry." And in high school, I remember we had to read Heart of Darkness, and so I often read what my brother did and cheated it and sort of copied it, but I had no idea what the book was about, and when I read his essay, I still didn't know what was going on. And that was sort of the story of our life. I mean, he took up the role as my leader, my mentor, and I really loved him. I never dated anyone who wasn't his friend. Rich was his friend and roommate, and so I will miss him terribly. And Monica, wow, you had me every day. Wow, thank you.
Someone else?
Hi, I'm Sally Seago, a longtime friend of Monica and Ray. And Monica absolutely tormented that man. She would jump out of strange places and scare him to death, and he'd scream, and he'd just, oh no! And then I don't know if he made Rags jump on him, but that scared him too, if he'd be asleep. And I loved Ray. But at that time, you drove down a hill, and there were pilings on the side, and then you continued, and Ray was driving, and I was in the back seat. I swear, my life, he almost touched the edge of and we would have gone over the cliff. It was horrifying, and I said I would never get in the car with him again, and I didn't. He loved Monica's cooking more than anything, and so did I, so do I. And he really appreciated everything she did for him. And I've only seen a few love stories like theirs, and they really did have a love story, and they still do. They still do. He was precious. And one last little funny thing, Monica and I went on a cruise not too long, a couple of years ago, and Ray stayed home with Zanny, and we got to the house and got to the door, and there are these keys hanging in the door, in the lock, and so we went down, and he said, I drove somewhere and I couldn't find the keys, so I've just been here all this time for a few days. And he was just fine, and he enjoyed himself, and I can see his face and hear his voice, and I know you will always see his face and hear his voice. And you two are just one of the very few couples who had that beautiful love story, and I'm so grateful I could be part of it. Thank you.
We had someone back here, you were on your way to speak here. Uh-huh.
I'm not sure if I understood my role today well enough. If I was supposed to be here, or with the festivities afterwards. Anyway,
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
I'm Gary Nye, fellow traveler with Ray in the medical profession, Dave Smith, and others who are here. And my tribute to Ray is a little more on the professional side, because we didn't have a lot of social life together, except within the context of professional meetings. But it's wonderful to hear the stories behind the person that sometimes you're seeing with that professional deportment that's most evident at the time you know them. It's always gratifying, and I think a very good sign when there's a lot of laughing. And obviously, there's a lot of laughter here. I say that because, in addition to being a psychiatrist, I've spent a good deal of my career dealing with sort of spiritual matters, not only within the context of 12-step, but for a number of years I was on the board of trustees with Pacific School of Religion and, the various seminaries on Holy Hill and Berkeley. And I learned a lot about sort of rituals, and particularly either religious or spiritual rituals, like we're having now. And just knowing what I learned sort of by osmosis, dealing with all those people in the clerical arena, in the clerical educational arena. This meeting and this place with these people feels particularly exceptional. I was asked by the Alameda Contra Costa Medical Association to write a memoriam to Ray to be published in our bulletin, which comes out every couple of months. And in composing that, I was just bringing the draft I submitted to them recently for Monica's perusal and perhaps editorial changes. But I realized that in writing this, I was plagiarizing a lot. I think I plagiarized quite a bit of yours, Dave. And of course, I used Ray's curriculum vitae. So I'm going to read sections, not exactly as it is, because that makes it a little bit maybe too dry for what we're doing now in the spirit of things. But I thought it was most interesting and most helpful and fulfilling to me to do the research to put this together. He was a member of the Alameda Contra Costa Medical Association for 11 years, and he previously had been a member of the Fresno-Madera County Medical Society for 13. Although having studied and practiced in other parts of California, I understand from what I read, and I believe it, that he always considered the Bay Area home. He was born in Germany, which intrigued me, and of course his name is consistent with that. And his father, apparently while his father was stationed there with the U.S. Air Force, and his mother was, as I understand it, was French. So that's an interesting combination. The family moved about a good deal in the youth, as is common with military families. I'm married to a lady who grew up in a naval family. And so in any event, he wound up in California for his education, which we've already heard, began at UC Davis. But what wasn't said was his BA was in psychology, so we know he was going in the right direction. And I say that somewhat for the humor of it, but also for the truth of it, because one of his particular qualities as a physician was his psychological sophistication. And therefore, I think that that's such an important blend in medicine. And sometimes it tends to get lost in the shuffle of technical training, but not with Ray. He got his MD, as we've heard, at UC Irvine, and his residency at the U.S. Public Health Service in a hospital in San Francisco. And we know that he was a Navy veteran. Now, I'm an Army veteran, so we won't go into that in great depth. But I certainly respect the fact that he had that as well. He had a wide-ranging career, I thought, endowed with what I think Dr. Smith wrote, with a particular empathy for those suffering with substance use disorders. And he became board certified in both internal medicine and addiction medicine. And that's a crackerjack combination, particularly in the health arena that we live in today and had been evolving during that time when we all practiced together, beginning in the 60s and 70s. What I want to emphasize from my perspective, because this was a keen interest of mine, that he had particular interest in skills that included the rehabilitation of physicians and other healthcare professionals. This was cutting-edge stuff at the time that Ray was doing it. He was a pioneer in this arena. And I think that it is a huge tribute not only to him to see that was needed, but to apply his skills in that way. And I think that's always an important sign with physicians, because it also means that you've got to be keeping a close eye on yourself. And sometimes we joke about with our M-deity, we kind of forget that part, what's going on with us. Even before he became a member of the ACCMA's Physician Advisory Committee, which was our version of what we call a wellness committee or a well-being committee. And it was one of the earliest ones in the country. He also had consulted with and directed many facilities and other programs with a similar emphasis. He had been, for instance, a medical consultant to the Physicians Diversion Program, which was one, if not the first, program in the country to try to get physicians early intervention if they were showing signs of illness or disability. I don't want to make this too long, but I want to emphasize certain points because they're so important. He also, he was a consultant to that program. He also taught and mentored residents, was with the clinical faculty at UC Fresno. He helped with the confidential line, we call it, of the California Medical Association, which is sort of like a hotline that deals with these same sort of issues when a doctor is in crisis. And he was on that for a number of years, and we served on that together, and it was just marvelous work that he did there. He also, as we know, worked with Dr. Smith, who was a pioneer in this area as well, a pioneer in the whole area of addiction medicine. And he was medical director for a time with the Medical Addiction Associates that Dr. Smith, I guess you started that, didn't you? Yep. He became a forensics expert. And that's no mean feat, because working in the law and medicine interface is very hard work. And in that regard, this is another indication of his multi-talented nature and his extremely sharp mind. So he testified in both state and federal courts. He worked in managed rural practices. So he wasn't just in the metropolitan area. He was out there where sometimes it's much harder to find help you need, consultations you need. And of course, his most recent position with a premier program, highly regarded Bayside Marin Chemical Dependency Program, where they often treat physicians who have difficulty. Physicians and other healthcare professionals, because it can happen to nurses and it can happen to pharmacists and all manner of health professionals. So, in my view, there's not enough that can be said for Ray and his clinical acumen, his management skills, and particularly this work with physicians. And along with all of this very hard work in some very tough arenas, as everybody has shown, he didn't lose his sense of humor. So I think he deserves not only the gratitude of the friends he has loved and socialized with through his life, but he also deserves the gratitude of our entire profession. I thank you very much for letting me take your time.
Hi. We traveled with Ray and Monica quite a bit over the years, and David touched on in his remarks the idea of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And we traveled to Spain. We went to Europe. And it was Monica, Ray,
David, myself, and our son Chris. So we arrive, I believe it was Madrid, and you know, we're all tired and everybody's kind of rumbly and grumpy and trying to get all our documents in order. And so we all go through passport control, and Ray comes up to the line and he couldn't find his passport. So we're all going, oh my God, Ray, I cannot believe, how could you lose your passport? Well, the first thing, of course, he had to do was to go to get a new passport at the embassy. So, you know, and it was really funny. I mean, we were kind of cracking up because we know Ray lost everything. So then we all gather together and we're planning on renting a van. So we rent this van that looks like a little bread truck. And we're all piled in the van, and guess who's driving? Ray. So we're just, Monica and I are going, oh my God, he almost hit that truck or that car. We couldn't believe it. I'm back there, I'm having an anxiety attack because I thought we were going to be going off the road into a mountain stream or something. So we finally arrive at this beautiful resort that we were going to be staying in Marbella. And so we went onto the property, and it's this winding road to get down to, I guess first we went to check in, and then we were going to park in the garage. So we get down to the garage, and we drive in, and there's all this air conditioning units and stuff above us. Well, as it turns out, the van was too tall. So we go under. Ray is like screeching under all of these vents. And we figured, well, what the hell are we going to do now? I mean, you'd have to go backwards to try to get out of the place. We were worried all these vents were going to fall. And we were going to, you know, have to pay thousands of dollars. Well, so, I don't know, I think I might have said, let's go stand on the back fender and see if we can squish this van down. And it was hysterical. Talk about a funny thing. Ray was hysterical. We were crying, we were laughing so hard. I mean, it was just nuts. So anyway, then I think Ray, we checked in, and then Ray was fretting because he lost his disc player or something somewhere on the trip. You know, I mean, it was just one thing after the other. I mean, talk about humor. The whole crew was just in tears. Then finally, we went down to the south of Spain, and we were at the beach. And so we were, you know, it was gorgeous, and the sunset, and it was really lovely. So we're all taking pictures and so on, and I looked over and I realized that we were about 13 miles from Africa. So I said, man, we're going to go to Africa tomorrow. We're going to take the ferry over. Well, Ray's there taking all of our pictures, and all of a sudden, we realized all these photos, the camera was pointed in the wrong direction. Anyway, we always love hanging out with Ray and Monica. When we were in Germany, wasn't it in Germany or Belgium, where he got lost on the bus? And we were gonna leave, in Bruges, yeah. So we were waiting, and Ray never showed up to get the bus. We were just, Monica says, we're leaving him. We are going to leave him. And so all of a sudden we turn around, and there's Ray kind of waddling over. And needless to say, we didn't leave him, but we just had so much fun. It was just amazing. So he was quirky. He did have a great sense of humor. We loved laughing with him. And then when we saw Dame Edna that time, I have never seen Ray Deutsch laugh till he cried seeing Dame Edna. That was hysterical. And Monica and I were enjoying it so much, we were just looking at him. But anyway, he was a lovely man. Had a great recovery, helped a lot of people, helped our family when our son was having a lot of problems. Ray and Monica did. And so we're going to miss him, and we love you, Monica.
Hi everybody, my name's Doug, and I have a little different take on Ray, so I wanted to get up here and share that with you. Like Einstein, he had a selective memory, kind of porous, and I knew that about Ray. I got to know Ray in the last few years. 6:30 Saturday night, we had an interest in common, and so we were part of a gathering. Every Saturday, I'd see Ray at 6:30. And I got to know him pretty well through those gatherings. He'd go out and eat with us occasionally afterwards. And one of the things that really strikes me about Ray, having heard people today, is his humility. Because the things that I'm hearing about Ray today is not, besides the sense of humor. The sense of humor was always there. But it's not the intellect that Ray shared with me, although I got a sense of that. What I mostly got from Ray, I don't know why I'm getting choked up, was just the immensity of the man's heart. He shared that with me. Now, I don't know how many other people in the gathering he did that with, but he did with me. And we had a lot in common in terms of porousness of memory, so I can't really share with you any specifics. But I can tell you that his understanding of Buddhism, and I lived in a Buddhist country for several years, his understanding of Buddhism was one of not the intellectual variety, but the experiential. And he lived in the now of the now. He was a person who embodied that. And I'll tell you, I was shocked when I heard of his passing, because he'd called me a couple of days before, and he thought that I'd called him, which is Ray. And I hadn't, but I had no reason to at that point, but I knew that we would be able to discuss it the next time we got together. And there was not a next time. And so I heard about it that next Saturday, and I was just shocked. But then I thought to myself, that's Ray, because the thing that he carried with him every Saturday was this, and other people have shared this, this persistence at life. And he was really the embodiment of that. He was cycling right up to the end. I'm a cyclist as well, and we talk about that. And I got to tell you, today I had lunch before I came here, and I was, panicky about getting here on time and so forth, just my nature. But there's a nice little ride that I can take from the restaurant where I eat, which I really love, and it's going to take me a little longer, and I'm thinking I might be late to get here, but I thought Ray would appreciate that ride. And so that's what I did. And I just thought about him. And shared a moment that we didn't get really to share, I guess, toward the end. And I cherish the memory of the man. So, Monica, I don't really know you, but I got to know your husband, and I'm really grateful for that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
I think we'll just wrap up, and then we have a wonderful reception to follow, and that's a perfect time to continue sharing memories. You've all stirred up a lot of memories, and I can see people nodding, so you're in agreement, you've experienced similar things. So I just have a closing reading, and then we'll invite you to go. The reception is going to be in the adjoining building. and you'll be ushered out. But let me wrap up with this meeting. It's called In Remembrance by Arnold Crompton. When I have moved beyond you in the adventure of life, gather in some pleasant place, and there remember me with spoken words old and new. Let a tear fall if you will, but let a smile come quickly, for I have loved the laughter of life. Do not linger too long with your solemnities. Go eat, drink, and talk. And when you can, dive deep to explore the ocean's treasures. Bike an uphill path. Play a challenging round of bridge. Consider a trip to Mount Vesuvius. Savor a tasty, though you mention not my name, though no thought of me crosses your mind, I shall be with you, for these have been the realities of life to me. And when you face some crisis with anguish, when you walk alone with courage, when you choose the right path, I shall be very close to you. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for all the wonderful stories that you've shared. And then we'll begin to recess, and I think our special guest of honor will lead the way. Great. Thank you.
Here's the first one. Absolutely. Oh, you know what? I'm not being Coca-Cola. Yes, ma'am. You want some ice in that?
Yes, please.
I know, right? Yeah, it is.
Hi, Monica. Just want to say how sorry I am to hear of Ray's passing. For me, as his nurse practitioner, he was a wonderful mentor, and he taught me not only to be a better clinician in addiction medicine, but to be a better human being.
Monica, that service was A+. And you know what? It's so exciting for me because I feel like I know Ray now. All his diversity and all his expertise and his brilliance. I just am so grateful that I've been here today, and I love you so much.
Monica, so glad to be here. We learned so much more about Ray, but one of the things that I think we all appreciate was his wonderful sense of humor. The stories you would tell me about the way you guys interacted just had me cracked up. It's just amazing, and I think we heard that reflected in the comments today, so yeah, good to be here.
Hi, Monica. I'm so glad I could be here today, especially with all of your good friends. It was so wonderful to hear all the stories about Ray and to see people that you've been talking about for so many years. And to see pictures of all your beloved pets and Ray holding them and looking up at them with those big brown eyes. And it's now, you know, your life is more open to us, and it's so nice that we can be here with you and hear all these wonderful things about Ray and your whole family.
Hi, Monica. I was a little hesitant about how this service was going to be because we had such a wonderful closure with the 5 of us saying goodbye to Ray with Zanny earlier this year, but this was so special. All of the love in that room, all of the wonderful things that people had to say, the things that we really never had the opportunity to learn about him because we saw him on such a limited basis. But we are so happy to have shared this today, and I love you so much.
Monica, I'm always here for you, and I know Ray's here for you, because all the stories you tell me, he's always there looking over your shoulder, and practical jokes on you. So I love you, and I'm just a phone call away.
Monica, I am so glad that I was able to come today. I just want to share with you that Ray was always delightful to work with. He was always kind, he was always calm, and as a nurse I used to be so intimidated by physicians, and he was just so easy to be around and to talk to as a person, and it just made my career at that particular time so much nicer, believe me. I always looked forward when he was the physician that I knew was going to come in to see the patients. I love you, and you can always give me a call.
Hi, Monica. Terry said it all. We are all here for you. We love you so much, and Ray is definitely here with you too, and always will be. Can't wait to spend more time with you. I love you.